very honored to introduce Rita George.
Thank you. First, I'd like to just bow to Colette for bringing us all together. Because it's more important than ever that we have a collective, united, kindred spirit movement in America. So, I'm going to begin with a political story. I'm going to dust myself off and go back 40 years ago. It's 1977, November. It's political election night. I have lost my bid for the Board of Supervisors. Now, I'm not devastated like all of us are here today. I knew I was going to lose. I didn't know how large the margin was going to be. And to tell you, it was humiliating. Now, I was running as a statewide candidate because that was my constituency, and in August, I got locked in to the gay district in San Francisco. That means I'm running against Harvey Milk. We already know the outcome. I knew I was going to lose, but my staff, everyone, the contributors says, you have to stay in the race because you'll run again. Okay, I'm going to stay in the race and be criticized every single day and be beat up because I'm in the gay district. Not fun. I know what it's like to be Hillary Clinton and the character assassinations. But the thing is, after the election, I had to start going through a massive grieving process, and we're all in it right now. 5 phases. Denial, how many people are not here today? Because they can't come to terms with what's going on. They're under the covers. 2, bargaining. 3, anger. How many people are on the streets in the last 3-4 days? 4th, depression. I woke up with depression this morning, totally feeling what it's like in the country today and how many people are in pain and suffering. I could feel it, and I had to shake it off. But I'm going through the grieving process, and the last one is acceptance. And we all have to come through that process. And then what we do is we gather all our divine energy, we become proactive, and we make a decision. What am I going to do to reflect my core values? And as a political candidate, I had to make a decision. What was going to have deeper meaning for me in defending my core values? Now, you notice I didn't say fight for. When you fight for something, you're against something. It causes conflict, it causes violence, it causes war, hatred. Okay? It's about the positive side, and I'm going to talk about what we need to be for today. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Or would you like to do the other side? And I'm not going to analyze the political election. That's the other side. I'm going to do the bright side. So here's what it is. I've asked to do an overview. The universe is orchestrating a massive evolutionary transformational process. And it's going to shine its bright lights on every crevice, every shadow thing, all the dysfunction, all the absolute systems, everything that's going on right now. And it's not only the shadow side of the government and systems and organizations, it's what's within us. Okay? I'm going to talk briefly about the sequential path. It's what I accessed when I was back in Egypt in 1983. And it's so relevant today that we all understand this path, because individually and collectively, we are on that path, and we don't want to get stuck. Then I'm going to talk about cycles of history, social moods and how they changed. We are dab in the middle of the crisis cycle of history. You probably already recognize that, right? Okay, but it's not going to be over for another 10, 12 years. I'll talk about that. And this is all upbeat. Then I'm going to talk about core values, because politics is about government systems. It's a leadership, it's a model, it's morality, it's ethics, it's core values. And many times we lose sight about that. We're so focused on the personality instead of looking at the candidate and saying, what values do they represent and do they reflect mine? And we get caught up in the personality, the ego. Last, I'm going to talk about an ancient culture. The Phoenician culture, new discoveries over the last 40 years of a culture that reflected the ancient wisdom of the feminine. Because that's right what we're in the middle of. Exposing the revelations of the shadow side on why the feminine isn't being expressed in our culture and individually within us. Okay? Those 4 things, all in 50 minutes. So, I'm not getting into the details. This is an overview. I'm not doing any how-to, don't have the time. I'm just going to do little snippets here and there, okay? And you can ask me questions individually in between the other speakers if you have some, because we probably won't have time for that. So let's begin with the orchestration, the transformational process. Every process, because I've worked with thousands of people, begins with wake-up calls. You've all experienced a wake-up call. Your higher self, your inner spirit says, wake up, your life is out of balance, physically, mentally, emotionally, personally, financially, business-wise. And if we don't hear the wake-up call, the universe says, well, let me send you a second one. Let me send you a third one. You didn't get that, I'm just going to push you off the edge. Well, we're off the edge in America right now. Okay? 2008 was the beginning of the crisis cycle, which I'll get to. And it's free fall. We don't have a clue what's going to go on. Throw out everything from the past. Polling, all that. We don't know, because the divine energy is moving all of us to embrace our spiritual nature at the highest level of consciousness. There's no predictions of what's going to happen next. But all begins with 9 principles. And each principle has a balance point and imbalance point. And the imbalance points of the first 4 principles is people feeling helpless, you feel powerless, you feel restless, and you feel hopeless. How many people in America are feeling that way today? And the reason why we feel that way is because we're not on the map of consciousness. We're not awake. We've decided to go asleep. So the principles begin with power. You have to stand in your power every minute of the day, in every aspect of your life, and take a stand for what you believe in, the light side. And that leads us to access our inner creativity. And that activates the principle of responsibility. We're all responsible for evolving. There are no victims, and there are a lot of victims in the country today. And that helps us actually touch the inner integrity that we all have to express the truth. And integrity leads us to trust our higher self, or some people call God, or your divine nature. And then you're guided with wisdom. And wisdom leads you to make a commitment, a very clear commitment, no matter what your shadow side is, no matter what fear you have, you will release it. And as you release it, you tap into a deeper level of courage and inner strength. So it's creativity, integrity, wisdom, courage, until you develop a deep level of resiliency and you just keep on bouncing back in the midst of crises, uncertainty, and the unknown. That's where we are now. The key is having those inner resources. There are 5 more principles, don't have time for them, okay? But it basically goes, you cross a bridge, there's 1. It's the healing of the heart, the mind, and the spirit. That leads you to creating what we call heart coherency. Your heart, your mind, and your spirit operate as one. And only at that point, when all 3 are operating at one, do you truly understand the interrelationship between that the world's interrelated with the natural world, that we're all interconnected. That's where oneness comes in. And if you're not on that map of consciousness, you don't have that understanding. So it's crucial that we make sure that we're not abusing our power, we're not relinquishing our responsibility, we are looking to other people for trust, you're not on the map, and you don't take action to resolve all your inner issues, and we don't take action to defend our values. It's crucial that we do, because if we don't, we're unconscious, we're awake, we're asleep. We're all grappling with this, not just in America, universally. This isn't just an American plan, but that is a sequential path. It is evolutionary. We're all going through it. I've worked through with thousands of people, turned around organizations. It all begins with that path. Reclaiming your power, taking a stand. So I want everybody to breathe right now and just breathe out all that stuff that we've been carrying for the last year and a half from the election. Just breathe it out, because it's in our energy system and it's powerful, even if we've been conscious and awake through the entire process. So that's kind of universally. I'll give you an example, and I'm going to come back to politics again, since that seems to be a topic this week. It was 75. I'm head of the Nationalist Political Caucus. We formed a coalition. We've decided to establish a commission on status of women. Remember, an overview, I'm moving quick, you gotta stay with me. And it's Board of Supervisors in San Francisco. They're gonna vote on the establishment or non-establishment of the commission. We have the votes, 200 people. I'm the spokesperson, I'm the chief strategist. I've delivered the message. It's now time for the supervisors to vote. Oh my God. The person who supported us all for years votes no. The ordinance goes down. I'm shocked. I'm surprised. Everybody's looking at me. What did she do wrong? I'm like, I haven't got a clue. Now, let's go back to those 4 principles. I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to stand in my power and say, I don't know what happened with Jack, but I'm going to find out. And I'm totally responsible for the outcome. If this fails, I take full responsibility. I make an appointment with Jack. I'm going to call him, it was his name. Jack, you've always voted for human rights issues, women's rights issues. Watch, I am not appealing to his personality and say, what the hell were you thinking? I don't go in with a critical attitude. I'm reminding him what his core values are. He said, Rita, he says, you didn't ask me for the vote. You did not call me up and ask me for the vote. You took me for granted. I did, Jack. I absolutely took you for granted. I cannot tell you how sorry I am. What was I thinking? I just assumed you would vote for us. That's what I said to him. Now, would you forgive me? Would you vote for it next week when it comes up? No, I'm not going to vote for it. So now I know I'm talking to his ego. Okay, this is his personality. I'm on the principle of responsibility. I don't know what to do with trust yet. Nothing has come through. I don't have an answer. I'm talking to this guy's ego and, all right. I'm used to it though. I sit there and I wait. And then he says, but Rita, everyone is not for this ordinance. You may have had this whole coalition here, but I know of an organization that's probably against it. Oh, which organization is that? It's a Republican conservative organization. He's Republican. Ah, now the wisdom comes through. So Jack, are you saying that if this organization supports the establishment of the commission, you'll vote for it? He says, it's never going to happen. I said, that's not the issue. If they do, will you vote for it? Yes, I will, Rita. Okay, now I go to the principle of commitment. I, of course, set up a meeting. I meet with the organization. I am going to get the vote. Oh, it's 5 days later. We're in the board. Sitting next to me is the president of the organization. front row. Jack looks at me, I look at him, we both smile, yes. And there's an establishment of the Commission on the Status of Women. Okay? Whew. Now, I said, now I'm going to go get the money. And everybody said, are you crazy? The mayor's against it. I said, same strategy, gang. Power, responsibility, trust, commitment. Don't get hung up on the negativity, what the personality, the ego says, the judgment. Let it all go. Find the core values, set up the appointment, sit down, and wait and see when the wisdom comes through. And you walk away with the money to set up 3 positions against the greatest of odds. It's not relevant that the mayor did not want the establishment of the commission. All right? That's how this transformational path works, because you're expressing spirit at the highest level. And you're not allowing the fear and all that dark negative energy to enter your consciousness. By the way, it's the only commission in the state of California that is still funded. And it's helped millions of women and children and men. So don't ever let anyone ever tell you you don't have the power to make a huge difference in your life and everyone else's life. And we're all going to be called upon to do something and be proactive once we come through this grieving process. Let's breathe. Okay? Now I'm going to talk about crisis cycles of history. You can save your questions. We can answer them later. Now, this is Howland Strauss's work, read about 1997, and it's about social moods in the country. There are 4 cycles of history, just like there are 4 seasons. And guess which season we're in? The winter. And the crisis cycle is always the winter season. And each cycle lasts about 20 years. So let me briefly go back into the past and bring this up to the present so you understand the cycles. And you've all been involved in all these cycles in this room, except maybe you. You're way too young. No. No, he missed a couple of these cycles. Of course, we all missed the first one, 1929. All right? But some of us were born at the end of it, maybe. So, the stock market crashed. Beginning of the crisis cycle of history. The mood in the country shifts. People are upset. They are angry. They are starving. They are in pain. They are suffering. They look at government and they say, forget the establishment. The establishment does not have answers. They're not solving our problems. Leaders cannot manage anymore. Everything is out of control. That's what happens in crisis cycles. Dab in the middle of it right now. You saw the response. And then there becomes a catalyst, something that brings the country together. People unify. It's a collective effort. It's a collaboration because your survival is at stake, World War II. You work through that, and then you have a resolution. The resolution then was the Marshall Plan. It was Europe Recovery Act. So that's what happens in crisis. The next cycle started about 1946. That's what they call the high. And during the high from 46 to, let's say, 1960, we saw a great building of America. We became a world power. Okay? The third cycle, awakening, spiritual revolution, consciousness revolution. Anyone remember that? The 60s, the 70s. Women's rights movement, gay rights movement, civil rights movement, all the movements start. Now that's the progressives. Now what happens on the other side with the conservatives? The conservatives are aghast. Oh my God, women, minority, gays, everybody's going to have rights. We've got to do something. Lewis Powell doctrine, I won't get into it, okay? But basically it was like the corporations are going to take back their power, period. Concerted effort since then, 74, to reverse whatever was achieved in the awakening cycle. Got it? You've been seeing the culture clash since then. We won't get into the details. Up to 1980, Reagan. We're now entering what we call unraveling disintegration. Things are falling apart. And guess what the quality of that cycle is? Greed. Object greed. And I remember when Nancy Reagan was in the White House and she was talking about her $600 new place setting for the dinner table, about 1983. And I was overhearing a conversation and the table next to me said, that is terrific, because now greed is going to be in. Be in, acceptable, and I'm going to be part of it. I can do whatever I want, no ethics barred. Okay? That's what happens in that cycle. It happened in the past cycle, and in that cycle, you always have a high technology boom, and then you have a high technology bust. That was Clinton's presidency, and other things happened too. Now, normally when the crisis cycle starts, it was 2008. You remember the banksters destroying people's mortgages, all the people that had to suffer? Did the banksters go to jail? No. In Iceland, the banksters went to jail. Okay, not here. So, wake-up call. Universe is saying that's a wake-up call. Do something about your corrupt system. Do something about how obsolete it is. Do something about the dishonesty. We didn't. But a depression was probably prevented. So where are we now in that cycle? Look what happened in the election. Does it kind of make sense when you're talking about cycles of history why people voted the way they did? This isn't about logic. This is about what goes on in a subconscious level. People are not voting for what makes logical sense. Do I actually believe all those people voted for Donald's values? No. They voted because they are that upset. They don't have a clue what they really voted for. I'm not saying everybody, a lot of people do. They vote for something. They knew what they were voting for. So they're going to get change, but it may not be the change that they think they're going to get, okay? Because this is evolutionary. Spirit and the divine is guiding this. None of us know what's going to happen. Whatever happened in the past in politics may not be unfolding ever again. Forget the past. This is all uncharted territory. You have to start thinking differently. It's uncertain and it's unknown, which is so exciting. I love the unknown. Because there's so many possibilities. In the crisis cycle of history is when we evolve in consciousness. You come out the other end of the crisis at a far higher level of consciousness. And we will evolve. It's predicted the crisis will end about 2026 to 29. Okay? This is a very positive thing that's happening. It's extraordinarily exciting that we were born in this moment in history to not only witness it, but to be able to create a collective energy field that is going to offset the other energy. How much more powerful is that? That's making a significant contribution that has deep meaning. Okay, Trump and Clinton have played their roles in the crisis. They accelerated the process. Clinton needed to be the candidate because of the underbelly of all the sexism, the misogyny, everything that's been going on in our country needed to come out in the forefront. Only a female candidate would have brought it out. So that's what the universe is orchestrating. She did win. It doesn't mean she's going to hold the office. She's the sacrificial lamb for bringing this all out, the shadow side. And she's going to continue to take the heat. It isn't ending. They've been after her for 25 years. I took the heat when I was a young kid running for office. Why was I going to lose? Oh, she's attractive, she's smart, she has good ideas, she has a good grasp of government, you know, and can we trust her? She's a woman. Wow. Used to it. So, here we are. The two played their roles in this crisis. But watch out, because here's what's going to go on next. There is going to be acceleration of the crisis with no restrictions. Remember, Obama's been in office. He took office with the crisis, but he had restrictions, okay? And he was one of the good guys. But if Clinton had been in office, there would have still been restrictions because of the two sides coming from different value system. No restrictions now. Unprecedented. Ever. Because Republicans hold the majority of government governors, the House, the Senate, they're going to do the Supreme Court and the president. Guess what? Who's there to blame with whatever you do? Now let's talk about the map of consciousness when it comes to core values. Because if you're abusing your power, are you on the map of consciousness? No. You are asleep. You're not awake. So what has to happen for all of us who are awake and conscious? We're the ones that have to be the light bearers to defend our values. Seriously, defend them. Remember, words count, not fight. We always have to be for something, not against something. So let's talk about George Lakoff's work. Anyone read Don't Think of an Elephant? Moral Politics. Well, he has over 10 books. But he looks at politics as the family structure. Okay? And you have two things going on, the conservative and the progressive. Here's the conservative. See if you can see how this relates to what's going on. The conservative comes from the strict father value system. The authoritarian, I know what's best for you. I will control your body as a woman. All my children and wife must obey me. I have all the answers. I will force it down your throat if you don't like it. I will discipline you if you step out of line. But I will get my way. Got it? You're seeing it being played out every day. Let's come to the other side. The nurturing mother or the nurturing parent. The primary core value is empathy. You care about all your children, all your citizens, everyone's well-being. You have compassion. You create systems, legislation that everybody has equal opportunity. There's upward mobility for everyone. You know you need good government, not bad government, but you need government, because government creates the resources, the infrastructure for not only individuals, but for businesses to succeed. It's for the well-being of the individual, the family, and the company, and the government. So politics is about values. It's about morality. And you have to decide which leadership system do you believe in. And right now, it's about consciousness. It's not only a battle, and I'll use that word, between the progressives and the conservatives. And hey, the Democratic Party has a lot to do with what happened, okay? By not defending the values that they defended in the past. So now the whole map of consciousness, you can see where the country is. Who's going to own their power? Who's going to abuse power? Who's going to express darkness? Who's going to express light? So this is what's going on. All this makes sense? Yeah. Crisis site. You have the individual sequential path. We're all on it. You have these cycles of history, middle of the crisis cycle. And then we have these core values. The conservative, what I'll call the progressive. Now let's talk about an ancient society that actually had it all right. For 3,000 years, They avoided conflict, they resolved conflict, and they lived in peace. Even though they lived in 50 different cities on 3 different continents, and even though they were surrounded by larger, warlike neighbors. How did they do this? They were a highly conscious, wise civilization. Now, this story begins 6,000 years ago. So when I discovered this, I had to ask myself, why are we just discovering this now? And I think there's a very simple reason. It's only in the last 40 years, the new historical research, the archaeological digs, all the scholars that have looked at this whole situation, all that's come to the forefront. It's only about in the last 40 years that science is going to validate what I'm going to talk about as our natural biological instinct. And I'm going to talk about a society that emanated, expressed the energy of the feminine. And men and women both embodied it. It doesn't have to do with your sex. It was the positive of spirituality. And they created an electromagnetic grid that kept their society connected and linked together like glue for 3,000 years until a small dissident group destroyed the collective and one of the principles. And it led them down the path until they destroyed themselves. Okay? And we'll talk about that. We're right there today. It was self-interest versus the collective. Now, here are the 7 practices. But I'll briefly just give you a little overview of how this came about. Everyone know where Lebanon is? Middle East? Okay, here's Syria, here's Israel, up here is Turkey, okay? We're right on the Mediterranean. We're a little north of Beirut in Byblos, and they are traders. They have cedar, plentiful in Lebanon. So they build these cedar boats. None of them even have nails. All modern technology couldn't even probably replicate this. Seriously, they're amazing boats. And they are trading with Egypt. They finally they discover Egypt, think San Francisco, San Diego. And now they're trading with Egypt, and within a couple hundred years, the Egyptian leader says, I would like to have you bring me 5 massive cedar trees. And instead of trading for linen like we did in the past, I'm willing to give you gold. So the traders go back to Lebanon from Egypt. They call a town meeting. They say, we can't possibly deliver these. We don't have the boats, the manpower, anything to do this. So they come together in this little village, and they make a crucial decision. And the decision was, if we pool all our resources, all our gifts, all our talents, and we operate as a unified force field with a common purpose, common meaning, common identity, we can fulfill that contract. And we'll all share in the risk, and we'll share in the rewards. And a democracy was born in 3,200 BC in Byblos, Lebanon. 1 person, 1 vote, majority rule. From then on, every town that they lived in 3 continents, had a majority rule and a democracy. And every person in that town who was part of that society had a vote. And they adhered to that for 3,000 years. So, here's what happened with the 7 principles. I'm going to be talking about qualities, spiritual qualities again, just like creativity, integrity, wisdom, courage. What I talked about with that evolutionary transformational path, these are spiritual qualities too, all from ancient wisdom. The first practice, obviously, they're international traders. But instead of looking at every other culture as their enemy, or someone they had to conquer, obviously, They accepted all the other cultures. They were the first explorers on the high seas. They would come across a town and all of a sudden they'd meet people. They had different language, different costumes, different customs, different traditions. They accepted them. The Phoenicians learned how to develop rapport with everyone, how to understand the differences, how to listen, how to come into alignment with them. These were going to be their trading partners for centuries. How long have we had trading partners? Think about it. They had some of the same trading partners for 2,000 years. Think about it. How did they do that? Through unity, alignment, rapport, understanding. First principle. Second, partnership. Everyone, as I said, in their society was a partner in the trading venture. Okay? Equal. And outside their culture, everyone, as far as they were concerned, was a friend and an ally. They didn't have enemies. That's the dark side. We're back to the light side. You never look at anybody as your enemy. Even if they're larger and warlike, they're not your enemy. You don't go there. Now we're in the ego. Now we're in fear. You got to come back to core values. And I'll talk about how did they circumvent them when people set out to, conquer them. So partnership, collaboration, forming alliances was all part of the culture, century after century. Third, practice. Resolution of all conflict through negotiation and diplomacy. They were brilliant, masterful diplomats. They just didn't believe in war, and they weren't going to fight. It didn't make any difference what was going on around them. And they resolved all conflict within their own community. So let's say when a foreign culture came to conquer them, to force them, to help, literally want them to be slaves or whatever, the Phoenicians would be proactive. Watch, again, they're always for something. They would come up with an innovative strategy, be proactive. They would approach the leader of this conquering nation like the Babylonians, okay? And they would offer the leader glittering gifts and a very lucrative agreement. They would think, what is the core, what does that culture really want? It was usually money, okay? So they just were very generous. They shared their GNP and all their profits with other cultures. That's how they did it. So they gave away 10% more because they were going to walk away free. And their faith and their family and their freedom was crucial. The other side could be a fascist, but not them. Okay? That is a third principle. And by the way, the legend of Phoenix Rising comes from the Phoenicians. Let's say the conquering nation did not want to accept the glittering gifts and agreement. The Phoenicians would get on their boat, take their people, take whatever wealth they could, and flee. They weren't about to be destroyed. And they're not going to fight. They would come back a couple hundred years later and rebuild that country again. Century after century after century, the phoenix would rise out of death and be reborn again, just like we're going to be in this crisis cycle of history. And they became more and more resilient. No one ever defeated them. It wasn't part of their framework, because if you're on the map of consciousness and you're in the evolutionary transformational process, you're always standing in your power. And you are expressing your spiritual nature. You are accepting responsibility. The government doesn't have to solve all your problems. I have to start solving my problems. I trust that I'm in connection with my own spiritual nature to be guided. And I take active, I'm proactive. I don't wait until someone sets out to destroy me, which is where we are right now. The next principle, tolerance of all religions. As far as the Phoenicians were concerned, everybody's praying to the same God, just by a different name. Okay? So all the cultures had different customs, different gods, different traditions. They accepted everything. In fact, they admired everybody that was different than they are. They appreciated that they were different. And they built temples in every city that they lived in because they worshiped Mother Nature. They weren't religious, they were spiritual. And Mother Nature was the goddess. So in every town, you still see it in Sudan when I was there is the city, there is a throne, and it is vacant because it's there because that's where the goddess sat. And if you look at all their frescoes that have been discovered in the last 30, 40 years, the goddess is the one that's being worshipped by their culture. And the principles of spiritual femininity that I'm talking about. So, international trade, partnership, resolve all conflicts. You accept everybody's religion. What a difference from today, huh? Now we get to the respect for women. So Mother Nature created life. Well, women created life. So women are as valued as men in the culture. Women's power is as valued as men. Women were point blank equal. You remember when Obama said, men, look inside your heart. Do you believe that women are equal to you? Anyone remember this? He said it a week ago before the election. For a reason. So women sat on leadership councils. Women were the mayors. Women could even be the president of the culture. Every single position. Equal in sports, culture, civic affairs, business. Equal partners. And we're going to return there. The sixth principle, is equality. I mean, Bernie Sanders nailed it, right? It was his primary platform agenda. The lack of equality in this country, and we no longer have a democracy at the level we used to. But we won't get into the founding fathers really didn't intend on us having a true democracy. Because if we did, it would be the highest vote getter would win, okay? Let alone, let's not get into other things in the Constitution. But there are a lot of relevant things to be discussed in the future in our country. So, equality. No one's poor, no one's in poverty, and no one's extraordinarily wealthy. The multi-gazillionaires that own 90% of the world, okay? The wealth. There was upward mobility. Anyone could create and manifest more income if you worked harder or whatever, but would not be at the detriment of the collective society. So what was important was always the collective. You had to care about everybody's well-being. So education was important. Healthcare is important. Think about all the things that would be important for your society because you have empathy, you have kindness, you have fairness, you have compassion. Does all of this sound familiar? It's like what used to be the progressive platform. And they had an equitable financial system. Everyone shared in the profits of every trade. That's why no one was poor. Now, back in 3200 BC, instead of living in huts, the Phoenicians lived in stone houses. And when they started trading with other cultures, they taught other cultures how to live in stone houses instead of huts. Actually, they had plumbing in 2000 BC. Europe didn't have plumbing for another couple thousand more years. They had many things that were advanced technology. And there's a reason why they had them. Because of their consciousness and their wisdom. The answers are there to solve all our problems today. If we were on the map of consciousness, the insight would come through from the divine. The last practice is privacy. Now, privacy isn't about being secretive all the time. We already know where that went. Privacy is about get your ego out of the way. Do not boast about your wealth. do not boast about your achievements. What was the most important for this culture was, how do I create long-lasting, beneficial, harmonious relationships with people? Everything they did to do that. Every decision was based upon that. They were always for something, not against something. This was a very clear governance model based upon social justice and equality. They were very clear what they created. But here's the magical thing about this governance model. It's about harmony. It's what heart math talks about today. What is heart coherency? How do you create heart and social coherency? Think about it. If you have no conflict in your society, if hundreds and thousands of people are on the same wavelength, they are this gigantic social network living on 3 different continents and how many different cities, they are on the same wavelength. They're all together. They're emanating this electromagnetic field, one heart to another, because they will not get involved in conflict. That is the power of those 7 principles. Now, did they go through that evolutionary transformational path? Yes. They had to live it every single day. Every one of those principles: power, responsibility, trust, commitment, focus attention, acceptance, not attachment, alignment, and get to the principle of interrelationships, because they truly understood that the natural world and the human world were interconnected. They weren't religious, they were spiritual. They were connected to Mother Earth, and Mother Earth guided them. That's where this innate wisdom came from. And what is the one thing we're destroying today? Our wisdom. That's from nature.
But we're destroying the nature.
Yes, and wait and see what the first act is in January. Okay? Because everything is duality and polarity. But remember, we're in a wake-up call still. People have to wake up more. We have to get more of the shadow side out. So, destroy Mother Nature, do something, see if Mother Nature doesn't roar back. First act of the universe again. Unknown, a lot of things are going to happen. So those 7 principles, practices, have been playing out for the last year and a half, pro and con. Do you have an international trade agreement just for the benefit of the corporations, or should it be companies and workers? Okay? Should we have alliances? Should we create an alliance with Cuba and maybe set out to open up more democracy there? Because it happens every time you open cross borders. Or not? Do we negate the Iran treaty, nuclear weapon treaty? That's going to be debated. Or do you keep it? That's about resolving conflicts. Let's look at the religion issue. Just throw out the Muslims, build a wall for the Mexicans. Or do we defend our brothers and sisters? Then we get down to what we're going to do with Mother Nature. Now we have the whole issue with women. More and more sexism, misogyny. All this is going to continue to come out until we're buried in literally a swamp. And it's going to be a swamp. We'll talk about how you not get involved in the swamp. And then the whole issue of equality. Let's just cut all the taxes for the corporations, and that's going to help people acquire more jobs. Okay? That's one way of looking at it. Or do you really help create a democracy where people are more equal and everyone has financial opportunities? That's the next thing. And then the last one was privacy, the ego, boasting about yourself, all your achievements, all your wealth, this and that, versus creating lasting, harmonious relationships. All this has been discussed. Year and a half until we're tired of it. But it's all about consciousness. It's all about that evolutionary transformational path I talked about. And we all have to make a decision. Where are we? And what are we going to do? And I'm not going to get into the how-to right now. Just a few crucial things, and I'm going to open up for questions. Always be for something, not against anything. This is very challenging. Look inside yourself right now and say, what's going to give my life deeper purpose and meaning at this important time in history? During this crisis cycle of history, what are my core values? And what am I willing to do, stand in my power to defend them, not fight them? What group, I don't care if it's IONS, if it's a church group, whatever type of organization is, we need to be involved in a community of kindred spirits so we don't feel alone, that are making a difference. So that community, remember, those Phoenicians kept connected through their heart for 3,000 years. That's what gave them power. And we're going to do the same thing. And the universe is moving us toward embodying every one of those 7 practices. So that's the last thing. We have to express those Phoenician practices as we go through more of that evolutionary transformational process. Bottom line, what I love about transformation, I've been in it for so long, is it's always the death of the old and the rebirth of the new. Now I'm an explorer. I love scuba diving, skydiving, all that stuff, because it's like an adventure. I don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully I'll land if I skydive and I'm alive. Okay? But that's what it's like right now. It's uncertain, it's unknown. But we are going to be reborn. The phoenix is going to rise. It's up to each of us individually and collectively to decide, are we going to be shining our divine light every minute of the day? Are we going to be standing in our presence right now? Are we going to be pure awareness right now? Are we going to be expressing our bright light, a beacon of light? Or are we going to get over to the swamp in the darkness and get sucked in to all that fear, hatred, anger that's going to be taking place? It's our choice. Every minute of the day, you have to step on the map of consciousness and say, I'm taking a stand. I'm going to be expressing my spiritual power, the divine power that I've been given, that's my innate right. No matter what's going on out here. It has no relevance that we're in a crisis, that things are going to accelerate. We individually just have to become that beacon of light.